What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, it turns out we do have a gaming showcase to look forward to this week, and seems to have to do with a bunch of third-party games as it is a partner event for Microsoft. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Nintendo Switch Online and seemingly more updates, things happening behind the scenes that actually could be pointing towards a 6th generation edition with a new accessory. Then we'll also be taking a look at Ys 10 as reviews did go live, and turns out RPG fans just keep winning in 2024. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps it a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members to the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with Steam Next Fest, as it is now live and it'll be running until October 21st. You may be wondering what that is exactly. Well, they did put out a video just sort of going over it, summarizing it, showing off some of the games. And the idea here is you can go onto Steam and download hundreds of different demos for upcoming titles, and you can try them out in just free demos, which is pretty cool on its own. But then they also are going to have live streams with some of the different developers, and you can just ask them questions. The idea here, of course, is just get more exposure on all these different games that, let's face it, go into Steam and then immediately get buried by the next game coming up behind it. There's just a lot of titles that are added to Steam every single day. I mean, thousands of games go live on this platform every year. So yeah, any way you can to at least put a spotlight on some of these titles is a good idea, especially when it comes to just demos people can download, try them out. Obviously, if you have a Steam Deck, this is right up your alley, but even so, if you just have a gaming PC and you want to try out something new, some of these do look genuinely unique and interesting, so check any of those out. It'll be running again for basically the next week until the 21st. Also, we did have another rating pop up in Taiwan for an unannounced game, and now I know how MVG feels whenever I talk about Dragon Ball on the podcast. We can see this over on Gamatsu, where they say the Taiwan Digital Game Rating Committee has rated an unannounced Death Note game for PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. It's published by Bandai Namco. Now, there's some back and forth on the title. However, Gamatsu did dig a little bit here and found that it was Death Note Killer Within. So here's the thing with this. I am unfamiliar with Death Note completely. I know it's an anime, it's a manga and stuff, and it's fairly popular. People seem pretty excited about this one, but unfortunately, I really don't even know what kind of game. It could be a racing game for all I know. Okay, so I will say I did look into some of the previous stuff with this title specifically, and I found a DS game that I guess was released in Japan, and I think there was a translation done for it and stuff so people could play it outside of Japan. But when I looked at it, it seemed to be kind of a text-based game. So I don't know if this would end up being like a visual novel release. Whenever I see some of these different games, I immediately think of like an arena fighter, but that's apparently not really what Death Note would lean into. So maybe I'll go with that, some sort of visual novel or text-based experience for a game. But I guess if you're a big Death Note fan, let me know what you would like to see this be down in the comments. Oh, and we did have reviews go live for Neva, which we can see over on Metacritic, currently sitting at an 86. Now, this is on 25 critic reviews on PC, but if you also look on Xbox or PlayStation 5, less reviews, but also sitting at 86. Over on the Switch, it's at a 90. Now, this would be the studio who also did Gris, which people really like that one. I haven't played that, and I mentioned in a video, people in the comments said, hey, you got to go try that one out, see what you think about it. It's a very unique looking title. The art style itself, the animation, all of it is top tier, and it is sort of that emotional experience that they portray here on screen with the characters and the environment. So this also seems to play into that quite a bit, and it's out. It's actually out today, Neva, on the 15th, and so much stuff is hitting right now, it's very, very difficult to keep up. I'm bouncing right now between like 4 or 5 games, and here comes a bunch of other highly rated titles, which we're going to talk about another one later on in the show. So it's certainly hitting right now in the 4th quarter for gaming season. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with a gaming showcase that we had just talked about being rumored yesterday, and now it's announced. We can see this over on Xbox Wire. This is for the Xbox Partner Preview. You can watch it live October 17th, so there's a couple of days, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. They say, we're thrilled to announce the next Xbox Partner Preview. they call it a no fluff all games broadcast. So what I assume here is they're just going to show trailer after trailer after trailer, maybe gameplay demonstration thrown in there, say for an expansion or something. But I don't think there's gonna be much quote unquote stage presence from any personality or anything. I think it's gonna be pretty straightforward how this one is done. They say it's coming this Thursday, October 17th. In the latest installment, we're featuring a mixture of new and upcoming games for you to from incredible partners like Remedy, Sega, 505 Games, and many more, with over a dozen new trailers over the course of around 25 minutes. They do list some of the games that you can expect to be there, like Alan Wake 2's new expansion, The Lake House, an action-packed new trailer for Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, a peek at multiple bosses, and dark fantasy action game Wu-Chang Fallen Feathers, multiple world premieres, and other great titles coming to Xbox consoles, Windows PC, and Game Pass. And I know what you're wondering, is this finally the event where we see Hollow Knight Silksong? I'm going to say probably not, although technically they did show it at one point, so I guess never say never, but I'm going into basically every event expecting Silksong to not be there, and then just be surprised when it is. Still, this will be a situation where this event will be ongoing, and then people in the chat will just be asking for Silksong, and then disappointed at the end, even if they happen to show Half-Life 3. Still, though, I think they are set up for some surprises here, having things like Sega, 505 Games, Remedy. It seems like they're at least setting this up with some pretty good publishers here, and I would still like to see Square Enix show up with Final Fantasy XVI. However, I feel like the Square Enix would have been named here when they were going through all of the different publishers, so I'm going to back off of that one a little bit here. But other third parties, I mean, you can really take any guess at this point and throw it in there, and having Game Pass there alongside of it, you could maybe have a Game Pass drop or two right then and there just to get people excited, because it is fun to tune into these events and then leave with something right there for you to play on your dashboard as it is updated on the application. You can start downloading, especially if it's something kind of strange you didn't really think you'd want to try out. It's like, oh, well, it's right there. I'll give it a shot. So it'll be hopefully a good show. 25 minutes doesn't seem like it's going to overstay its welcome, and we should get a look at a bunch of different titles back to back to back to back, and hopefully not feel like it was dragged out much. So here's hoping there's some good stuff there. Again, Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern time, Microsoft with their partner event. Next up, let's talk about Nintendo. And once again, this mystery playtest. We still don't necessarily know what it is at this time, but I do think really any day now, Nintendo is going to tell us what it is ahead of it going live, because do you really think people are just not going to post about it online, especially if it's something like GameCube titles? That seems to be the leading theory right now as to what Nintendo is having people test, and the idea being you would stream and then maybe even download the titles in the background as you're doing that, or maybe just streaming them outright. And now it's gotten to a point where people are lining it up with shipping logs for an actual accessory, one that would go alongside of a GameCube NSO release. And what accessory do you think that is? Well, it would actually be a revival, or I guess just a new version of the Wavebird controller, and I am completely here for that one. Now, how are people coming to this determination? It's actually through shipment logs and parts that are being tracked. We have gotten to that level, which technically these different forums like Fanboards and Reset Era have been at that level for a while now with the Switch 2. I'm not even kidding. People have been tracking and lining things up and trying to figure out where these NVIDIA chips and screens are going, and it's all coming together technically to try to figure out if it's going into mass production anytime now. But we can see this over on Reset Era as this user put everything together here, and I'm not even kidding. I mean, they have the listings for the part numbers, the boards, the rumble motors, seemingly the trigger on either side, the charge LED guides, the 4-layer LED guide. I mean, it is quite thorough. They also managed to point out that the rumble motor that's being used here would make sense in a typical Joy-Con or like a Switch Pro controller, or Switch Switch 2 Pro controller, because it's the rumble motor that would be used in the current GameCube controller. As we know, there is a GameCube controller that Nintendo technically produces right now. It's wired and it's really only used for Smash. I mean, that's what people use. I mean, that was the idea when they made it. They put like a little Smash logo on there even. But this would most likely be a wireless one that would charge through USB-C, as once again, a lot of the stuff does line up right alongside of the Nintendo 64 NSO controller, which utilized those same features. And wouldn't you know it, to go alongside of this, just last night, Wario 64 posted this up, and it seems to be basically something that was sent out by Nintendo for the Switch Online Plus expansion pack turning 3 this month, and it says, stay tuned to find out on what excitement the next year will bring via Nintendo Switch Online. This through the newsletter. So, okay, I wonder what other excitement it would bring. I mean, I guess it could be just like a DLC expansion pack thing. It could be another kind of like one-off game, like an F-Zero 99 or Tetris 99, sure. Or it could be the next logical step for the Nintendo Switch Online, like retro nostalgic collection, which at this point, you figure would be GameCube, and that with a controller, this weird mystery playtest coming up, it does kind of line up with the idea of that being related to it, although it's still not necessarily guaranteed. I've gone back and forth on this. The 2.2 gigabytes is throwing me off a bit. It does make me think that maybe they're testing out a feature just with a multiplayer game that's already out there, and they want to attach something like different ways to invite, different ways to stream games, different ways to do voice chat. There's a whole bunch of possibilities, but I gotta tell you that I keep coming back to the idea of this being GameCube related. And I know part of that's because I want to see it, but it does kind of line up. So we'll see if I get to pick up a new Wavebird controller as soon as maybe the end of this year or going into next, because that would be an awesome timeline to be a part of. And seeing some of these shipment logs does get me kind of excited for the idea of that. I wonder if they would do multiple different colors, or they just go with the standard indigo, or would they go with like a platinum color? A lot of potential there. But first, we need to see what this playtest is about, and I guess we're going to find out one way or the other next week, so we'll see. Next up, speaking of game streaming, it looks like Microsoft had some announcements to make, and then more to make next month when it comes to your library and which games you can stream on multiple different devices. We can see this, though, posted up. This is over on Pure Xbox, and it was an announcement that Microsoft had made that we would see multiple Call of Duty games going into game streaming. This for the Xbox Cloud initiative that they have. The titles that they have shown here, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which, yeah, makes sense. It's going into Game Pass, so obviously that kind of lines up with the idea of streaming it, but also Modern Warfare 3 and Call of Duty Warzone, which that one in particular is kind of interesting because it is free to play. Like, so these free to play games seem to be what's influencing the market currently. It's something that I think is, I'll say, holding back the current generation of systems, but I do think it is keeping people on their PlayStation 4 and Xbox Ones because like Fortnite works there still. And if that's all you play, why would you upgrade technically? So it's something to keep in mind with these free-to-play games. And in this case, Microsoft has one that's very popular with Call of Duty Warzone. Now, I'm still kind of confused on how this works with Ubisoft because I thought part of the deal was that Ubisoft would control some of the game streaming. I don't know if it was different territories just in general, but I guess we'll see how all of that works out technically. And I would assume they're going to be dropping more and more Call of Duty games into Game Pass and into cloud streaming over the coming months and year. Now, on top of this, The Verge had a report here saying that Xbox Cloud Gaming will let you stream your own games starting in November. Now, this seems to be something they're going to test out with Xbox Insiders in November and then expand them to more Xbox users and more games. But the idea here is that you would be able to stream your own game library, not just things that are in Game Pass, which is basically the limitation currently. You have to be subscribed to Game Pass Ultimate, and then those games that are offered in that subscription service can be cloud streamed. I guess it's kind of a way for Microsoft to curate what they have to stream and what needs to be available. Whereas if you open it up to just any game you own on Xbox, there's more logistics and more hoops, I'm sure, for Microsoft to jump through to make sure they have a machine in their big data center server farm ready to go with that game loaded and the correct system settings and everything ready to roll. So this appears to be something we should at least see rolling along here before the end of the year, as again, The Verge is calling for next month. And I've been thinking this would be Microsoft's end goal, but it's taken them so long to get here, and it does kind of feel like the cloud initiative slowed down a bit for Microsoft. It just, at first, seemed like full speed ahead, and then let off the accelerator a bit. Just, there hasn't been a massive improvement for cloud streaming, and when I see Sony, for example, offering it on the PlayStation 5, and the quality is just just better. I mean, Stadia was actually very good. It's gone now, mostly because of their business model, but the technology and the streaming was better than Microsoft's, and even like GeForce Now is better. So it seems weird to me that they are lagging behind when it comes to the technology side, but this would technically lean more and more into their business model of the subscription service with Game Pass, and then allowing you to play your Xbox games anywhere. And that kind of that feeling of just being free and be able to go to whatever platform you want, whether it's to handheld, to console, to Fire Stick, that convenience should be something that can attract more and more people to the platform. But first, we'll see how all of this goes next month when they at least start it up for insiders. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Ys 10, as it is finally making its way to the West about a year after release in Japan. And we do have reviews that have now gone live for it, which we can see over on Metacritic, currently sitting at an 82. This is on the PS5 that has the most reviews. The next one up would be the Switch with like 3 reviews, and then the PC with 2. So there aren't a ton of reviews out there yet for Ys 10 Nordics, which I'm sure it is a longer game and people are still going through it. The game doesn't come out until the 25th. But as I was going through some of the reviews, I was both happy to read some of it, then also kind of like disappointed, because the big thing that I was really interested in was the idea that you would get a ship and sail around and stuff, and kind of that sense of adventure there. Unfortunately, most of the reviews I read said that was the weaker part of the game, and it was actually the land-based exploration and combat that was the highlight. So kind of unfortunate there. But I did download the demo, which, yes, a demo is live right now across all the different platforms that it's releasing on, and it's actually been pretty fun so far. So, I mean, the combat still Ys-like, still what you would expect from it if you played Ys 8 or Ys 9 recently. It's still kind of that same sort of idea, but visually speaking, it is a bit better than those games. Still not on like the grand quote-unquote AAA level of what you see with Final Fantasy 16 or even recently Metaphor or something like that, but it is still good. And it's still a lot of fun. So I'm going through it, as I said, the demo, which lets you play apparently through chapter 3, and then your save data will transfer over, which once again, I'm running into the issue of there's just so many games happening right now. This is on the 25th, and as we get towards the end of the month, we're going to have things like Dragon Age come up. Then we'll get into next month. There's a whole other slate of games. I'm still looking at Metaphor. Like, I want to play Metaphor. The game's 80 hours long, and I started the demo for that one too. So it is like all attention is being pulled in all different directions. I'm just about done Silent Hill 2, which is good. And I'm playing Sparking Zero off to the side as I'm playing other stuff, because that's kind of a game that you just probably play for quite a while to get everything in it. So I don't know, Ys 9, Metaphor, can I bounce between those two and then get Dragon Age in the mix, then Mario and Luigi? It's all over the place right now. Not a bad problem to have, though. It's worse if you don't have a bunch of games to play. Here, though, there are too many things coming out. And then here comes Ys 10, which I'm curious about the ship combat, but I'll keep going through the demo and see what I get. That coming out October 25th. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, have you bought any of the recent Nintendo Switch Online controllers? So like the N64, the Super Nintendo, that kind of thing. 83% just say no. 17% say yes. And I am curious. So I think I'm going to run this poll again if we do get GameCube announced along with a controller, to see how many people are buying the GameCube controller. Because I do think the idea, at least, of Nintendo releasing a first-party wireless GameCube controller, I feel like it's kind of enticing for people, even if you don't have a Switch, because let's face it, it will get to a point where you could probably just sync it up to your PC and use it for emulation, that sort of thing. And that kind of that first-party feel of a controller, as we know, is typically preferred for most. So that's the thing. And I would love to pick one up, be able to take it apart, check it out, see some of the quality they did with it. And that I think would be very exciting for people, as opposed to a Super Nintendo controller, which I think has mostly been conquered at this point by third parties like 8-Bit Do, or an N64 controller that for many people just looks weird and feels weird. It isn't even a great controller in the first place. Again, for most people. I still like the controller. It was pretty cool. But still, GameCube controller, I feel like this poll's gonna be a bit different. We'll see. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Santosa, who says, as Destin Legary said on his podcast yesterday regarding Game Freak's future plans, they're making more Pokemon games. I mean, yeah, they're going to make more Pokemon games. People tend to forget, though, that Game Freak, they do make other games. Like, the last couple years, they did Pocket Kart Jockey Ride On. Actually, just a few months ago, they released a game called Pandaland in Japan. It's a mobile game, sure, free-to-play game, but still, I mean, it's something different. And actually here in fiscal year 26, they're releasing something called Project Bloom, which is a apparently an action adventure style game. They partner with Private Division, so they do still have other things outside of Pokemon. But we all know Pokemon pays their bills, so obviously that's what a lot of their resources are diverted towards. But trust me, Game Freak has at least been trying to get something off the ground that's not just called Pokemon. I mean, they did Little Town Hero, didn't really work. They did Giga Wrecker. A lot of people don't know that exists. They made like an elephant game, kind of the same thing. So yeah, it's mostly been Pokemon for them, but who knows, maybe Project Bloom will turn into something big for them, we'll see. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card for you. Maybe you wanted to hear an old man talk about the good old days of Halo and being somewhat optimistic and hopeful for the future with Halo Studios and Unreal Engine 5. I'll leave that in a link below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.